Good morning, and welcome to the backyard at Bloss. As you can see, it's through the support that we receive from Bank of Ireland and the whole team that makes it possible. The one thing I learned as a producer before the bank asked me, not this bank, the other bank, asked me to sell the business, was that education was important. And that was my downfall. I wasn't educated enough. And I also thought I was smarter than I am. But, so when Bloss started, one of the most important things to us was education and inspiration. So the inspiration is going to come to you this morning from Nuala Moore, whom I've known and had the pleasure of knowing for over 30 years. I recently listened to an interview she did with Brendan O'Connor, and it changed my attitude. So Nuala has just released her Limitless book. Is there anybody else I should thank? Vivian, who just came down a couple of years ago and keeps on coming back down again. So thank you.
It's a privilege.
So Vivian is our main person here, and then Stephen and Max on sound and audio. This, I believe, is being streamed. Thumbs up. And it'll be available on the YouTube channel. Monday. Thanks, Max. Okay, so this is the first session. Feel free to come on down and occupy the seats. I wish I could stay, and unfortunately, I have another engagement in the next marquee. So you're all very welcome. From one producer to others. Firstly, I'll say congratulations. Congratulations to being here. To be in the top 5 in your category is an achievement. And this is what your customers, the buyers, are looking for. So without boring you any further, I'm going to hand over to Vivian. And I wish I could stay, Nuala, but I've just checked. I'll get it.
Heard it many times, Artie.
Not this one.
No, because the story keeps on growing, Nuala.
Just like
You
myself.
know what I mean? Yeah.
We're all growing.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, RC. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Brilliant. This is a great start for Backyard at Bloss this year, and thank you all for being here. I have this legend beside me, an adventurer, a world-renowned open water and ice swimmer, also a native of Dingle, and has a beautiful shop on Green Street if you pass it, Strawberry Fields. But as Artie just said, has just also published your book, Limitless, which we're going to talk about. But this woman beside me knows all about endurance, best known for swimming 1 mile. This I still can't get my head around.
1,000 meters, I would say.
1,000 meters.
Okay.
Which one though? From Russia or the one
Okay.
specific?
Okay.
Specifics.
Okay.
So, from the Pacific Ocean to the Atlantic Ocean, the Drake's Passage, if anyone knows that, that is not easy.
No.
We'll talk a bit about that. And then also, one of only 3 women in the world who has swam 1,000 meters
Okay.
in ice cold waters, 0 degrees in Russia. That's about 15 degrees here, is it? And that's cold.
No, ice is 0.
Yes, so
Yeah.
here in Ireland, that's how cold, but you are in 0.
Yeah.
So, Nuala, tell us, everyone here, tell us a bit about you at the start.
Well, I was born in Donegal, but I grew up in Dingle. And for a lot of people who live in coastal communities, the sea is our swimming pool. And we were very lucky growing up that I come from a fishing family. So being thrown off a boat and swimming home on a Sunday was a rite of passage. But I mean, a lot of people did tell me that I should really rethink the fact that my father would take us out every Sunday and throw us off the boat. I think what we learned very young was skill sets. We learned how to survive. We learned don't go here, don't go there. You know, if you swim out in this area, a boat could come and hit you because they can't see you. But it was never don't do it. There was never a sense of don't go into the water, don't go into deep water. It was like go here, go there. And we were always given the ability to stay on the beaches until we had no food or we were frozen. But we stayed there all day and we developed skills along the way. And I remember when I was very young, probably around 7, 8, 9, I used to watch the boys swimming from Slawdeen to Beanbawn, which is around by the headland. And at that time, I hated having to sit on the towel, stay there until the lads came back. So I remember my first big swim, I was probably maybe about 9 or 10, but definitely not older. And I went after the boys as they swam from Slowdene to being borne around by the headland. And at that time, I never thought that I couldn't swim. I just knew that I couldn't stay here and be left behind. So it wasn't about, being good or being better. It was not drowning. And it was, it was that skill set that we had growing up, being able to risk assess, knowing how to get out. Because if they caught me, they probably would have killed me. So there were so many other risks at play here. So from a very young age, I developed this ability to just love the water and be on the beaches. Because if you went home, you got jobs. So if anybody here is in a business, I grew up in a hotel. So the longer you spent at home, the more beds there were to be made, the more dishes there were to be washed, the more dishes and jobs there were to be done. So the longer you could stay in the water and stay away, the freer a childhood we had. So we were very blessed that way.
Yeah, and actually on that, you also studied hotel management on top of everything else.
Yeah.
But you often say that it's the strength of the collective that makes the individual strong. How does that resonate? Can you talk a little bit about that?
And I think that goes back to my childhood. Everything we did in groups. And as I grew into swimming, it bothered me that other people didn't have my experiences. And it wasn't in, oh my God, I can do this. It's but if we all go together, we can all do this. And I think that's something that's harnessed in groups. Very early on, I would swim, say, from Coon to Ventry across Ventry Bay. And I remember people thinking, God, I could never do that. And I would say, well, why? Why can't you do it? If I can do it, you can do it. And okay, I can swim, and I was strong, and I was very powerful. But if you can stay alive, you're able to swim. If you can rotate your arms, it's about fear. So a lot of times people look at their ability to complete something or do something as based on their maybe inability to visualize it. Whereas I would always be able to see, well, okay, I can get there. So look, let's figure out the middle. And I think when we started creating swims, we had this way of doing it that we would have put one person out the front because somebody had to follow somebody. And then the strong people would go at the back just to ensure that nobody was left behind. And then the weaker swimmers were in the middle. And they weren't weaker, they probably had fears. And I often think of people who say they're afraid of open water. I often think, well, if you can swim, you shouldn't have fears. Your probably fear is that you may not be able to self-rescue in the unlikely event of anything happening. And I think that comes down to maybe, I'm not able. And that's where the panic and the fear comes in. So when I say it's the strength of the collectives that makes the individual stronger, it really is about making sure that your perimeters are safe so that you can continue within the middle if you are somebody who needs to grow. Now, loads of people that I would have helped are 10 times better than me now, but they wouldn't be stronger. So I think it's all looking at skill sets within that. So that's, for me, team is very important for me.
Yeah, absolutely. So how did you get from swimming Ventry Harbour to swimming across the Bering Strait?
I know.
Russia to USA.
Yeah.
How?
And I suppose there's probably a lot of people in this room who started small and are now building their product. And what you start isn't exactly the goal that you've ended with. And there's a lot of twists and turns along the way that you probably think, well, how did I get here? But it's all about building skills. Because I probably wouldn't have set out swimming across Ventry Bay thinking, well, I'm going to end up here. It's just where the road leads. And I think that's the beauty of life, isn't it? With me, I, in 2005, was asked to be part of a team to swim around Ireland 56 days. And you might look at that and think, gosh, 56 days. We didn't think it. We thought we'd done in 28. And developing the swim and doing the swim and visualising the swim could never have, I suppose, given us the challenges that we endured. So when we started in Donegal, first of all, I have to say you can't train for these swims. You have to train to be strong. You have to train to not say no. And when we went into the project initially, I think I only have to swim between 4 and 6 hours every day. That's all I have to do. But then as the challenge changes and the project develops, and you've swam from the north coast down to Tusker Rock, we shot down the west coast or the east coast because it's fast water. The water on the between Ireland and Scotland is like a running river, and it's light water. So we were really strong at that point. But then we turned Tusker Rock, and I hope I'm not going to offend anyone from Cork. But the Cork coast goes on forever. It's like, will we ever clear the Cork coast? And for us, once we hit the south coast of Ireland, tides run north-south, we're heading west. So the challenge has changed completely. And in the challenge changing, like we were stuck in this, we only have to do this. But then you have to decide what's the goal. The goal is to swim around Ireland. So you have to buy into the common objective. Now, at this point, there was an amazing team, which there was from the beginning, obviously, but we always trained for casualty recovery. We always trained for what will stop us. We trained for the things that could go wrong, as opposed to physically training. But as you're getting weaker, you're getting less able to swim. The team were getting stronger. And I think there's a beauty in that. And that's putting people around you who will always help you as you start to depreciate, but also be able to see. So it took us 2 weeks to swim the Cork coast.
Wow.
So I think we really need to lessen that size of the county, pull in the boundaries, reduce the size of the county. It's a very simple answer.
Wow.
But then as we turned Mizzen, you're heading north. And as you're heading north, you're then getting lifted by the tides again. But the problem then faces that we're in the Atlantic, next stop America. So the tides are massive there. And we didn't have a blueprint for that. So it took 28 days to swim from Dingle to Donegal, passing horrendous conditions. So what we learned there was team and value and all these amazing things, because we broke down institutionalized. It's like getting to September in Dingle. By the time you get through June, July, and August and September, you become quite white line fever, as we call it. So with that, I developed great skills. And even though I went back to normal swimming afterwards, it didn't feed the beast. It didn't excite me. There was nothing in it. It was mundane because we had broken and built. And then in 2012, I ended up being invited to swim in Siberia. And you might think, well, why? And I thought, well, do you know what? If a swim is over in 30 minutes, it's a great option. Because my swims were 5 and 6 and 7 hours. I was running out of time. So it didn't matter how hard it was or how painful it was or how difficult it was. It was the fact that it was over quickly. But I was very confident. And in July that year, I had swam 26 kilometres across Lake Zurich, 12-hour swim, in at 7 in the morning, out at 7 at night. But I wasn't in love with, it was just enduring. So going to Siberia, I thought 1,000 metres at 0 degrees, 2 other women in the world had done it. No problem. Rock in, get into the water, hang tough. That's it. And then when I got into the water, it was like the ice. And for anyone now who goes into the cold water, you have that sense where it's gone. But then you have to move. So it's real conflict. It's all this stuff going on in your head. And I think, I have these statements, if you can't breathe, you can't swim, or train for what stops you. And they were mantras that used to go through your head. But I was faced with this beast. I had no idea what was stopping me. I had no clue what it was. And it was interesting that RT referenced education, because I am always one of these people, if something has stopped me, I need to figure out exactly what it was. So sit myself down and figure it out. So after 150 metres, who gets out of bed to swim 150 metres? It was like I felt really pathetic. But when I came home, I turned the key in the door and I just thought to myself, how do I do this? So I got a pen and paper. I'm sure there's a lot of people in the room have a visual. They know what they want to do. And now they have to figure out how to get there. And it was the beauty inside there that really excited me. So I would go up to Pedlar's Lake in the Connor Pass, swim an extra minute every day, but train to recover, train to be strong, train to be able to handle the pressure of the breathing, but also understand what cold shock was, cold water incapacitation, all this stuff. And then after 8 weeks, I went back into Russia and became the first Irish swimmer, but the third woman in the world to swim 1,000 at 0 inside the Arctic Circle, in just my togs. So it was swimming for 23 minutes. So when people do a lot of the ice baths, it's bringing it down. But then for us, we've got to kick and go. So it is a conflict. And it was interesting with the Irish rugby team. The last day, there's a lot of talk of this 74th minute where they all stopped to breathe. I was invited on August 1st to speak to the Irish rugby team in Carton House, so that was amazing. But what I thought was fascinating is a lot of people think about bringing the breathing down, but they have to kick and go. So like they're there, they have to bring it down, then they have to turn and fight. And that's the difference. So I loved that sense of battle, because I do think we are born to survive, and there is probably a big loss in survival instinct has crept in. So there's a great sense of battle in the ice, and it keeps you humble, and it brings you back, and it makes you, I suppose, address all your weaknesses. And I think that's what I loved about it, is you put a group of people around you that allow you to fail, but fail in a way that you can learn, which is beautiful. So then from that, I was invited to be a member of the team to swim from Russia to America across the Bering Strait. And that in itself was one step up into insanity. But blessed to be living in Dingle, there's a bit of madness in all of us. And yeah, so just signed ourselves up, and off we went then, and we joined a Russian military ship. And we started in Chukotka in Cape de Genève in Russia. And we started to swim from Cape de Genève to Wales, Alaska. And again, you might say, how do you train for that? And you can't. You can't train for those moments. But what you do is you prepare. So you prepare to be able to not say no. So it doesn't matter what it is. But again, all of the swims along from the Round Ireland to the 1,000 metres at zero to all the other swims, plus my life experiences, were able to give me this ability to let go, to be strong, to just build skill sets within myself, to trust people. Because it's not my job. I can't save myself. I can't speak, I can't hear, I can't do anything when I'm swimming in these conditions. But I still have to uncurl my fingers and let go. And I think a lot of that is trust. Yeah. And it's also accepting that whatever it is, you know, what's progress, what's failure, what is achievement, and how do we define it? Because not everything is a win, but there's a gain. There's a gain in skill sets, there's a gain in value, there's a gain in ability to be stronger, and there's a knowledge of turning the key in your door when you go home and knowing whatever is coming at you, you're going to hit it with a juggernaut. And I'm not always brilliant. There are moments of weakness. There are moments where I'm not all that. I don't like to recognise them. So yeah, but when you are in the Bering Strait, there were huge moments where there wasn't any progress, you know, because the tides are massive. They're pushing you back, 16-foot waves, 3-degree water in the middle of the night. And there is a madness. You know, the biggest risk, everyone talks about the wildlife or the cold, but the biggest problem is human error. You know, that we will make a mistake, that they will make a mistake. But the option of making a mistake is we will die. And then suddenly you're faced with that, but you can't face it. You have to live in the moment. And that's the beautiful thing about it is, you know, how do we define progress? How do we define value? And for me, at this point, I was, I suppose, trying to find a value within the sacrifices I was making. And I think if you are putting your heart and soul into something and your passion into something and your trust into something, and you haven't found that value, there's always going to be a sense of, well, what if it wasn't good enough? But there's a beauty in finding value that when you turn the key in the door, it might be 2:00 in the morning, that you might have a little giggle for maybe a little bit of madness that creeps into your mind. But there's the beauty. You know, it's finding value in what the sacrifices you're making for your achievements. Now, I mean, you know, for the rest of my life, you'll be sitting in a little rocking chair, please God I make it, and telling the world, you know, did I not tell you now that I swam from Russia to America? But there isn't anything like, I mean, how can anybody say it was amazing? Because it was insane. It was the closest thing to a James Bond movie where you're hurling your body onto boats. And we were separated. There were moments where a swimmer is separated. I couldn't get back onto the boat. I couldn't, you know, there's trailing waves. The engines don't have engine guards. You know, if you go in too close, that, you know, you could be killed. There's all these things.
And do you let go? That you talk about letting go. Or are you at that moment going, this is what I have prepared for?
But you see, if you can't breathe, you can't swim. So you have to take it down. My job is to rotate my arms for this exact moment in time. That's it. My job is to stay alive for the next 15 minutes. And please God that they're on their game. And there's a beauty in it. But you see, you become, like I often say, when you put on your goggles, you become completely detached from what's happening outside, because there's so many what ifs in this world. There's so many variables. But what if they don't happen? What if there is magic? And for me, like when we eventually broke through, and it did take 27 swimmers over 6 hours to swim 2 kilometres between them. Now, how many people would view that as progress? Very few. Very few. But at the point is you're not being pushed backwards. And I mean, I remember talking to the Irish rugby team just about that point, because at some point you have to hold on strong enough that your competition will weaken. There's a little thing there that you might just get through that gap. And you know, they did it against South Africa.
Yes, we'll be waiting next week.
Yeah.
And of course, your chat to them has clearly worked.
Absolutely, without a doubt.
I'm putting that down to you.
Now, I did actually say, it was so funny, because my friend Anne-Marie and I, neither of us are small, and you're probably going into the next speech.
No, I want to hear what you have to say.
Okay, thank you.
Sure if everybody
No, because the rugby team were going to bed, actually. They had to go to bed, I had to be quiet. No, I do talk a lot. But what I was getting at there is, like, both Anne-Marie and I are not small. And I was trying to explain that there are times where people like us are thrown into the game just to hold position so that the fast boys can rest. Yeah, and that's life. Sometimes you have to just hold your position. Now, I wouldn't be fast, but in a storm, I would be strong.
You're the dependent, yeah.
Yeah, so there's place for everyone.
So you have wrote this incredible memoir of all these stories and of endurance and everything that you've gone through. Before I let you go, what was your motivation, or, you know, this is you, Nuala.
Yeah.
What was your motivation to write this?
Yeah.
And where did you get the time? But what was your motivation?
I've written it all myself. I wouldn't take a ghostwriter because there was just too much to unpeel.
Yeah.
But I think as time passed, for me, the world has changed enormously. Like, social media has changed enormously. There's so much content out there.
Yeah.
And I just felt my life had drifted backwards into grey twilight. And I think the one thing that I didn't give myself was recognition for the sacrifices that I had made, for everything I had given up. You know, I didn't have sponsors. I went out and I paid for a majority of this. And I think my last swim was going south of Cape Horn, which is how I bookend the book. I start, and I was the first swimmer in the world to go south of Cape Horn into the Drake Passage, but there's no land east or west as the world turns. Now, the risk of letting go there is that they would lose me, as in I would be gone. And I don't know why I took on that risk, but I felt that I had lost sight of the strength.
Was that to feed the beast?
Yeah, well, sometimes you wonder, do you still have it? Okay. You know, do you have your swagger? Do you own your swagger? You drift away backwards and you wonder, do you fit in? Do you still have this moment? And I had drifted backwards into my own world because this other world was coming at immense speed. And I remember sitting down, and I had a life change. My sister died suddenly a few years ago, Mary Ferret, or a few people might be aware of her. So, you know, Mary owned her swagger.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know what? I'm going to take my swagger back. So I decided to write. Now, I was commissioned to write it, but the book that they commissioned is not the book they got. And that was just me. But at the same time, I needed to unpeel the why. And I think sometimes if you make all these sacrifices along your life, if you bring your life to a point, it is so important to look back and give yourself acknowledgement for the life you have given up to be who you are. And I think if you can just own your swagger for that moment and just say, right, to be here, that has cost me that, because the cost of any event is the amount of life you exchange for it.
Yeah.
And I think for me, you know, this, if it is being very well received, but for me, it's so that my nieces and nephews and my family will know it wasn't all madness, that there was a great sense of courage and strength in there.
Yes, absolutely. 2 Guinness World Records.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, it's phenomenal. And endurance, I think everyone in this room, you understand, well, not swimming the Drake Passage.
It's the same thing.
But endurance and the you know, the bad days, the tough days, riding those waves, you know, of business, but in your case, more extreme. But if there's any question, before we wrap up, has anyone any questions for Nuala, or would like to ask any questions while she's here? The books, she has a couple of copies here if anybody wants to purchase any, but also in the shops in the local village and town. But if anybody has any questions, please feel free, raise the old lava. Yep, that's fine. I have a microphone here, actually. Stephen, that's brilliant. Thanks, Annie. I forgot that I'm not out there. That was brilliant. Thank you.
No, it's fun. I go on a lot. I'm sorry.
No, brilliant. I really enjoyed that.
Okay.
Thanks very much. That was very interesting.
Thank you.
I do some endurance racing myself. I'm always interested what's next after something like this. Where do you go after that?
Do you know what? Pre-COVID, I had wanted to go to Mount Everest to swim a kilometre in a lake at 5,000 meters to mix the altitude with the lack of oxygen. Do you know, it's just about switching up the cocktail. But still, I'd love to walk. No, but I mean, I struggle walking. So I would like to kind of do the trip to Nepal, but then do something with it. I mean, the other plan I had was to replicate Tom Crean's down in Elephant Island. But I mean, have the trip with it. So yeah, to look at, maybe Love Island will call in the middle. I'm very hopeful.
I'd be for that.
I'd be very hopeful.
I'd be totally up for that.
Nuala, I was hoping you were going to say the next thing is the chili dip tomorrow morning at 7:30 on Vantry Beach that Annie Dunn has organised. So everybody is welcome to come to that. So just get that little plug there.
Okay.
There's just
Might
another
see
question
few
up
bodies.
here in the front. Please, Sharon, that'd be great. That was brilliant. We're right on time. We're fine.
Amazing to hear your story. I love sea swimming, but nothing like that. But I'm wondering, from what you're saying, is a lot of the challenge your own mind?
Oh, absolutely.
Is that it? And we have this phrase, it was from Finding Nemo, of course, but as the children have grown up, just keep swimming, keep swimming.
But you see, sometimes we stop. We stop along the way and we think, oh my God, I can't. But like, what's stopping you? And it was very funny because Andy Farrell actually asked me, one of the questions was, I know, well,
Andy.
my new best friend, please, give me my moment.
I love this.
But, he just said to me, like, when you're swimming for 6 and 7 and 8 hours, like, what goes through your head?
Yeah.
Or if you're in the ice, it's like, but you don't make any other plans for the day. It's a very simple question, because if people stop what they're doing and you can still continue, what has stopped you? And like when I was training for the ice and pushing myself into 1,000 at 0, I mean, there was no training plan. There was nothing to follow. There was no blueprint. I mean, you're freezing your body and you're recovering and freezing and control and freezing and pushing into that abyss where you are about to let go. But the point is that, like, you have to figure out what's stopping you. So my motto in life is always just train for what's stopping you.
And also, you're after the swim around Ireland, was it 2 years it took you to raise your arms above your
and everybody wanted something on the top shelf. Just couldn't. That's always terrible.
But like your body, your mind, your body, everything it's in.
I would never have been part of a team. I'd be a bit of a maverick. So I would never have training programs, never been part of like, say, the psychiatrists I'm sure are lining up at this stage, but I just did it all myself. I just followed my own path. And there's people probably, in the room who are kind of, they know exactly what they want to do, but it's the getting there, it's the weaving, and then that'll change.
And to believe in yourself, that's something
but
you're
it
very
is
strong
the mind.
about.
But there are
know your
times,
strengths.
in 2017 and 18, and it's in the book. In 2018, no, sorry, terrible. In 2017-18, I hit this major drop, this collapse, this complete collapse that I found zero value in everything. And like, I went backwards into my own world. And that was why I took on Cape Horn, because it forced me to let go and trust myself. But I hated looking in the mirror and not seeing. And I mean, this isn't what I see. I look in the mirror and I see Bugs Bunny. Swagger. But you have to believe, and I would visualize what I want from it, and sometimes I can't get there, but failure shouldn't be viewed as anything other than a learning curve, because it's in there you find your weaknesses.
It's the learnings along the way. Exactly. I think on that note, that's a really lovely note to end on.
Thank you.
Nuala, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Read the book. So it is a phenomenal story of endurance.
Thank you.
And credibility.
Thank you very much. Thank you.